presumably aren't going to hit me with an exact number here. But as far as you're aware, that side of things, is that just taken care of? United and Mbeumo, you think that will be
that'd be fine.
Completely fine.
I think you don't bid like this for a player that you haven't sort of sorted all that out. It's the wages that gets done first, really.
Hello and welcome to Stretford, Paddock. My name is Joe and this is Inside United with Laurie Whitwell from The Athletic, of course. Laurie, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you
Good.
guys?
I'm very well. Jay's here as well, as always, of course. How are you, Jay?
Yeah, I'm good,
smile.
man. Oh, thank you. And, same to you.
Same to you, of course. We've got loads to talk about today. Beautiful smiles being one of them. But we've got Bryan Mbeumo. That's the big story. You were talking about it recently. That second bid has gone in. We'll get into the details of what that exactly means, how official that bid is, what the interest from Tottenham has been and continues to be, and how close this deal is to being done, or is it done? We'll get into all of that. Also, of course, the latest stuff on outs. There seems to be new names, new clubs being mentioned for the likes of Sancho, Rashford, continuing interest in Barca from Barca. We'll get into all of that. Also, there's been a few updates on the non-playing side of things. Nick Cox has left Manchester United, the academy director. We've also seen a new chef come in. We've also seen different people coming and going on that front. We've got loads to get into, but let's start with the Bryan Mbeumo stuff. You tweeted in the last, I believe, 24 hours.
I want to say it's going to be 48 now.
Okay.
Was it Tuesday night?
Tuesday night, correct.
Was it?
Was it?
I can't even remember. Do you want to go on my Twitter?
Was it Tuesday night?
What?
If we're recording this Wednesday afternoon. So.
Oh, no, it was Monday then, wasn't it?
Okay, Monday. Okay, there we go. So you tweeted on Monday night.
The 23rd of June I tweeted. Yes, Monday.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, it was Monday, wasn't it? Because we did a live on the back of it.
I should have remembered the exact date.
Sorry, yeah.
That a second bid.
Thanks for the heads up, by the way. Cheers, mate.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right. We'll just find out what everyone else does who follows you on Twitter.
The second bid had gone in for Bryan Mbeumo. Talk to us about that bid. How has this happened? Because 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago actually it was now, a first bid went in and was rejected, 45 million plus 10 in add-ons. This one is in the £60 million mark. Talk to us about how this deal has happened and Brentford's response to it.
Yeah, so we don't know exactly where it's up to at this moment, although I know there are reports that are saying it's very close. I get the sense that we are, coming towards some kind of conclusion. I think that ultimately he will become a Manchester United player.
Great.
But clearly Brentford want a price that is, I think, above Matheus Cunha's £62.5 million. 65 million seems like a number that's sort of being spoken about. So whereabouts is United's bidding that, I don't know, but equally it's clearly close to that, isn't it? So yeah. It's now a case of, from United's point of view, I believe it's a bid. Brentford might have a different interpretation, but I think that ultimately they've suggested how much they would pay for a player, and now I think it's in the stages of add-ons, exactly how those kind of terms are agreed. But I think, we're getting closer. And so let's see. Obviously United have got pre-season training on July the 7th. I'm sure that they will want it wrapped up by then. Ruben Amorim certainly would do. But clearly Brentford, they've got a price in mind that they want to see matched. I think there is some talk about Spurs making a bid that's in excess of that, something like £70 million. Now, there's people connected to Spurs that are denying that an actual bid has gone in, to me. So, again, is this part of the negotiation? It obviously makes sense, doesn't it, from Brentford's point of view? If they can get an auction going where they say, well, listen, Spurs have bid this amount of money, United have to come up a little bit at least. We know that the player wants United. I think that's pretty well established now, but we can't just accept what you're giving us because we've got another offer on the table. Clearly Thomas Frank has gone from Brentford to Tottenham. It's his old club. Is there a favour being done in some way? I don't know exactly, but I think what is clear is that United are continuing talks with Brentford for Bryan Mbeumo, and I believe a conclusion will happen, although at the moment I don't believe it's imminent.
We saw it with the Cunha bid where United were trying, obviously the money had to match the buyout clause, 62.5 million, I think he said, where United wanted to pay it, I think, over instalments, and Wolves were like, no, that's not happening.
It's going to be in instalments, but not as many instalments.
Yeah, not as many. So it was United wanted 5 and it's 2 or something like that. Do you think that could be any sort of sticking point with this, with Brentford, where United try to sort of stagger it out a bit further down the line than Brentford would perhaps want?
They'll definitely be trying that, yeah. Like I said, I don't know the intricacies of it, but they will want to make sure that they can, live within the PSR means. So if they had 30 million, put down for Liam Delap, and then they've had to pivot to Mbeumo where his price is double that, they'll obviously try and make it so that, okay, overall it's not too much of an impact on the immediate accounting. which is kind of ironic, 'cause obviously to Jim Ratcliffe was bemoaning the fact that United are going to have to be paying money for players that they didn't sign this year, but 2 years' time they'll still be paying in something for Cunha, for example. So it's just part of the game in football these days. There's rare occasions that teams will pay outright for a player. United actually did do it for Harry Maguire, Leicester.
Did we? 80 million one-off chunk of cheese on the table.
They had loads of cash in the bank at that point. They had like £300 million in cash.
And obviously that will never go away.
And that also
days will last forever, won't they?
That negotiation's got down in history as like one of the worst ever. Like Leicester wanted 80 million quid. United took 2 weeks as well.
What do you want?
What do you want? 80 million? Well, I'll tell you what, we'll give you 80 million. We'll give you all at once. How do you like them apples?
Would you say 80?
Yeah. There you go.
Treat yourself to that
business with you. Leicester must have been like, what's going on? These are actually insane.
That's got to be up there. I mean, there haven't been that many transfers more expensive. Do you know of any transfers that were more than that were paid in one instalment? It must have happened.
I mean, would Mbappe instalment, Neymar, they would have been more, surely. I don't know, to be honest. But
it's got to be up there as one of the biggest single instalment transfers of all time. I love that.
And then the Bruno Fernandes one was quite significant as well. The initial fee for that. I know it was then. I know it was then add-ons, but I think even that one was quite a large sum up front for. To Sporting.
It's around the same time as well.
Yeah, it was the January. Was it the January?
Yeah,
2019.
This is why part of me feels a little bit sorry for Maguire. It's not his fault that he was involved in that transfer. We paid so much over the odds for him. Do you know what I mean? It was just nonsense, and that makes it even worse.
I'm going to say something about that Maguire transfer. I think we're almost at a point where I will say,
go on,
it was worth it.
Okay.
And I'm not saying he is an £80 million centre back, but when you look at some of the players we have signed for more or similar money than him. None of them have had, he's been here, 5 years? I think 3.5 of those years have been either good or very good. Half of it, half a year wasn't great, and he had 1 year where he was kind of in the wilderness a little bit. There aren't many transfers that we've got 3.5 good years out of at any price.
Look at Jadon Sancho.
Yeah, Sancho.
Antony.
Look at the big signings made. Sancho, Antony, Pogba's one that he did get some good time out of him. But then Lukaku was gone in 2 years. Di Maria was gone in 1 year. Like most of our big money transfers didn't even last 5 years or even 3 years, let alone play well for 3 years. So I'm not saying it was good value by any means, but I think it's approaching a decent transfer more than half the big money moves that we've spent.
I sort of half agree in the sense that it's a lot better than the ones you've just listed.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I think for 80 million quid, I'd like to, because even the trophies we've won, he wasn't that involved in.
Have you ever heard of the phrase, captain, leader, legend?
Sorry, you're right.
Right. I'll say no more.
You don't have to get involved in that.
No, okay.
He's won that argument. He's shut me down and he's won. 1-0 job. Well done.
The phrase captain, leader, legend, that just wins.
That's what I can't reply to.
What can he's
done me.
Yeah.
Just on the Mbeumo stuff, in terms of him as a player, I know we've spoken about it already because of how long this deal's been going on for, but was the approach of him a response to not getting Delap? Do you think that was going to happen anyway? Do you think that this is a kind of second choice thing? Because I think for a lot of people, I know Cunha represents a little bit more in terms of flair and that kind of talismanic sort of swagger. But I think for a lot of people, Mbeumo is almost more what United need in terms of he's such a reliable player. He's such a sensible kind of... He plays like an adult. I know I think Carl Anka said something similar. You don't look at him and go, why has he done that? He's a sensible, smart, intelligent Manchester United footballer if he does play for Man United. Do you think that this deal was a sort of second choice thing, or do you think actually we would have wanted him anyway?
It's definitely a response to losing out on Delap, just because they were going for him. He chose Chelsea.
Yeah.
Then the Mbeumo action was then enacted.
Okay.
Whether they could have got to a point later in the window if they'd made sales that they could have got both of them, that would have been something. I think they've always had him in sort of the back of their minds, but it's just that Delap had a release clause that was obviously pretty inexpensive comparative to what United were getting, and so it would have been 2 signings straight away. I mean, look at Delap, he's already scoring for Chelsea over at the Club World Cup. So they've got Cunha in as well. So that would have been 2 signings straight away, where it kind of feels like momentum. It feels a fresh start. They always knew that it was going to be a bit of negotiation with Brentford here. It's gone on quite a long while, but equally still 2 weeks, I suppose, 10 days maybe before the start of pre-season. So I think it was always that way. But as you say, I think a lot of people will think, well, actually, you're getting a better player. Okay, he's older, but equally, he's got that consistency in the Premier League. He's certainly a very proactive footballer. Yeah, to your point, him being an adult on the pitch he works off the ball as well as makes an impact in the final third and in the box. So I think it's a very good alternative for United to get. I think I've said this before, haven't I? That he could play up top. He's not loads. He's played there for Brentford 5 times, I think it was last season, in a sort of back 3 system. So there's some similarities there. Cunha as well has done that. So you could have a sort of rotation between them. But yeah, I think maybe they could have got him ultimately if, for example, Rashford is sold, Garnacho is sold, and then it kind of makes it all worthwhile. But I think they've obviously had to change course a little bit. But I think people will be, if it comes off, which it feels like it's going to, fans will be pretty happy with.
We've had a coffee delivered by producer Ben. Thank you, producer Ben. Who's dropped off some coffees for us. Just on the sort of thinking around Mbeumo and Delap, how much does the age thing come into it? Because obviously with Delap, early 20s, sell on value. Mbeumo, maybe not as much. What is he? He's going to be 26, I think, when the season starts. Is that something that's affected United's thinking when it comes into this deal, or the keenness to get it done?
Yeah, probably early on in the window. So they went for Cunha as a kind of much as they could guarantee of an impact in the Premier League.
Yeah.
He is 26, so Delap was a nice sort of dovetail to that. 22, a bit younger, time to progress at United. So yeah, signing 2 26-year-olds for good money is not really what United have done much of. Premier League players as well from other teams. It's the kind of thing that I think United used to do back in the day under Fergie, where Dwight York, for example, he'd done well for Villa. Right, let's get him in, and obviously Cole made an instant impact. Andy Cole,
Van Persie.
So many, and but they've obviously gone abroad in recent years, tried things, and it's weird. It's never really worked.
It's sort of where we're at though, aren't we? Because we need a bit of that. We need someone who you can rely on a bit more. We know he can do it in the Premier League. He's done it in the Premier League. Both of them have done it in multiple seasons in the Premier League. So it kind of makes sense because we can't really afford to be taking too many gambles.
Well, look at City, the way they did it. Obviously they'd bring in an Aguero or a Rodri or whatever. But look, early days, it was Kyle Walker. He'd been at Tottenham. You knew he was good. Raheem Sterling, he'd been at Liverpool, you knew he was good. Riyad Mahrez, he'd won the league and was excellent for Leicester. Like, they were the sort of 3 of the sort of core players for that team, and then they'd fill in elsewhere. Even De Bruyne, he wasn't Premier League proven by any means, but he was Premier League experienced. He'd played in a Premier League setup. He played in England.
They've always done that.
They've always done that.
Even Emi, who shall not be named, he was at United, and Nasri and at the Bayard, since the money came.
They signed everyone from Arsenal.
They signed Arsenal. Cliche, They did, didn't they? And then they've always sort of mixed it up a bit.
But I do think that's such a crucial thing that, and I keep sort of spouting this sort of fact, but since, other than Mount, United have only made, I think, other than Mount, United haven't made a signing from another Premier League team in 5 years. Yeah, and that was Maguire and Wan-Bissaka.
Striking, yeah.
And it's mad that, isn't it?
Yeah. And certainly the other point to say on the choice of they wanted a centre forward, didn't they? And I still think they probably will. I know I wasn't sure last time I came on here whether they would actually go and get one. I'm more leaning towards the fact that they probably will ultimately. Okay. With Rasmus Hojlund, attracting interest definitely. Inter are there. I think United would probably prefer a sale on that one rather than a loan. So let's see how that goes though. But so that's why Delap was originally the target, because he was the centre forward that it fitted more with what they needed. And Mbeumo sort of takes up that place where Ahmad does his best work, so they're obviously going to have to figure that out a little bit. I know Amarin's done him at right wing back a couple of times, or more than a couple, but so that's something still to be worked out. But that was the original thought process anyway, so they've obviously had to change, I think, approach there.
We'll get properly into the striker stuff in a minute, but it's interesting what you've said there about a sort of renewed optimism that a striker will come in the summer. Just finally on the Mbeumo stuff, not just so we've got a kind of a full picture of this deal, or potential deal as it currently stands. The Tottenham stuff, you think there's sort of mixed messaging on how genuine that was. In terms of the kind of contract side of things, I know you presumably aren't going to hit me with an exact number here, but as far as you're aware, that side of things, is that just taken care of? United and Mbeumo, you think that will be
that'd be fine,
completely fine?
I think you don't bid like this for a player that you haven't sort of sorted all that out. It's the wages that gets done first, really.
Frankie de Jong. Sorry, other than Frankie de Jong.
Well, yes, good point. I forgot about that.
That was a disaster. Yeah. Anyway, so you think, so just to lay it all out, so the contract side of things...
A logical club doesn't...
Yeah, well, that was it. Exactly, that wasn't logical, was it, to be fair?
The contract side of things, you think, is all good?
Yeah.
The deal, the fee side of things, the gap is narrowing massively, isn't it?
It feels like that to me. Okay. And certainly, at Brentford, are adamant that they want, compensating properly. United are obviously just trying to get it as a best price as they can. It takes a bit of time. I accept that then you do have to, draw a line under it at some point, which obviously then we're getting towards the start of pre-season. So that clearly is a clear deadline, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know you want to move on to other targets. I want to ask you about one quickly, because in the news this morning, a lot of people were asking about it, and I think you mentioned him in The Athletic. Emi Martinez. What's happening there? Because it's sort of sparking a massive debate this amongst United fans. I know you and Steve were talking about it yesterday. Whenever I've mentioned it in the news, like the chat is just sort of becomes, not obsessed with it, but it sort of generates such a big discussion because it's quite a divisive issue. Because it's not open and shut where you go, yes, get him, he's mint. But on the other hand, it's like not everyone is 100% behind Onana. What's the sort of latest on Martinez? Is there something really there, you feel?
I don't know. We included it in the piece because, in fact, my colleague Jacob Tanswell, who covers Villa, is informed that, United have been in touch with Martinez's camp. And I do believe that United are in contact with quite a few players in different positions. So that they're assessing the market, they're seeing what might work, they're trying different things. So that's why you get the Christopher Nkunku links as well, for example. So there's different players that they're looking at now. Does that mean that they're going to go and act on that? I don't think, well, certainly not in all the cases. With him, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because he clearly now wants to leave Aston Villa. It seems to me, right?
It's
he
like
kind
he's
of
like
bidding
decided
farewell,
he's gone.
didn't he? But he's 32. He signed a new contract last summer, so his deal's up in 2029.
Yeah.
So Villa are going to want big money for him. I've seen 40 million reports. I've not checked.
For me, that.
Exactly. I personally don't see how you can sign a player that's just been sent off at Old Trafford.
I mean, he didn't put himself in the shop window there, did he? I know he's done a cheat.
Weird.
Can't judge him off one game, but that wasn't a good audition. If you wanted to sort of convince United fans you're the answer to their problems with a calamitous keeper.
That's what I mean. It's like you're trying to sort of change that narrative, aren't you? And this is a guy that was last seen at Old Trafford, body slamming,
basically costing his team the Champions League football.
So it doesn't feel like the right platform. Listen, I'm being a bit churlish there, but he's had mistakes in him this season. So it just feels a strange one. But clearly he's up for sort of seeing what's out there after Aston Villa. So, but Andre Onana, I just don't sense at the moment that there's momentum behind, him departing at all. It just feels like, again, never say never because it wasn't a perfect season for him last year by any stretch of the imagination. Although he did have good moments, some of the double saves were fantastic, but he obviously made a lot of mistakes as well. But there doesn't feel like there's a real swell of traction behind him departing. In fact, even he's in talks with, he's had a chat with Bryan Mbeumo about playing for United, so he's sort of doing a bit of agency work there for United on that score.
Keep him then, just for that. You don't want to mess up that one.
Maybe he knows what he's doing there.
Yeah.
You can't get rid of me if I'm actually the
me and Bezzy,
key ingredient.
Bryan Mbeumo.
The personality of Onana, I don't think anyone seems to question. Maybe as a player, but I think he seems like a good bloke, and he seems like an interesting, fun kind of guy.
I know I say this all the time, but when we met him, me and my kids met him, he was dead nice. He's top bloke. I just hope it works out for him because this is the season, isn't it? Now he's had 2. It's got him, and also there isn't really another option because Bayern doesn't cover himself in glory when he comes in, does he?
No, that might be the one, really. Do you get a second slightly upgrade?
Well, maybe that's the option
keeper?
then. Get a £5 to £15 million younger keeper that, should things go well, could replace Onana, but will instantly replace Bayern. I could see that.
Yeah.
But spending 40 million on a 32-year-old who I don't even think is noticeably better than Onana, if any better than Onana in Martinez, I don't see the point in that at all. Just on the strikers, we'll come back to the midfielder stuff, but because you mentioned, we're sort of on the striker side of things, there's the big names in there. Obviously, you've got a couple of Victors and a Hugo. And I mentioned Lemiz before. I can do jokes on that all day, but I don't need to.
So highbrow, innit?
So Victor Hugo, if you get it. Anyway, let's start with the first Victor. We've got Osimhen in there. You've got Gyökeres in there, and then obviously Hugo Ekitike. We've spoke about all 3 of those players, I think, in the past. Is there any genuine interest in any of those guys? Like, it all felt like, oh no, Gyökeres might go to Arsenal now. He hasn't yet, and Sesko seems to be on the radar as well. Oh, Osimhen's going to Saudi, or he'll stay at Galatasaray. Well, he hasn't done that either. Ekitike is another one. No, Liverpool want him, Arsenal want. Well, he hasn't done that. So they're all still an option. Are United actually interested in any of them?
I mean, yes, I think they are. I mean, certainly Ruben Amorim's interested in Gyökeres. I think there's certainly been discussions around Victor Osimhen because he's scored goals wherever he's been. So United need goals. So they are definitely looking at a striker. Hugo Ekitike obviously has done well for Frankfurt this season. Different types of strikers, aren't they? A lot of money being talked about as well. Again, it comes down to that. So I think that's why they wanted to get Cunha and another striker forward done. So Mbeumo, they hope, will be that person. And then they feel a bit more comfortable then with a level of goal scoring potential in that team that then maybe just gives them a little bit more leverage in talks with, the potential clubs that they might be looking at getting strikers from. So, but again, I think now after, if Mbeumo comes in, I think it's then a case of sales and trying to raise revenue so that they can go again later in the window.
Well, I mean, you're a big fan of all of them, really, aren't you? Like,
they've all got different merits.
They've all got different merit. If you had to pick one, is the one that you particularly prefer?
I think in terms of coming in and people just smiling their heads off, it's Victor Osimhen. There's just people love him. I know people love Gyökeres and Ekitike is exciting, but there's something about is just even the way he runs, his the stride, the way he smacks the ball harder than you've ever seen. He's great in the air, and I wasn't always sure about him. I think when you put Mbeumo and Cunha in there, the ability they have to find players, their teammates. I was worried when it was Rashford and Garnacho, two players who want to cut inside and have a shot. Or even Antony, put him on that list. I think Osimhen's going to just be isolated and quiet. But with these guys in there, I could see him being amazing. To be honest, I think they're all very interesting. I just don't want United spending 80+ million on them. That's the worry.
I have a fear.
I think there's alternatives out there as well.
That you might think is nonsense. That we could end up last minute deal with almost any of them with a striker. Maybe someone like Gyökeres because he's had this issue with Sporting. If they don't get a bidding for him, they don't get any money for him. Maybe United could go sort of later on in the window and go, we'll take him off your hands for a bit of a cut price. And
that's why taking your time in some circumstances works, because then you've got a club that clearly know they need to sell a player. I mean, that feels like a very broken situation, doesn't it, now with all the stuff that came out after our last chat on this segment. So I mean, his desire to join Arsenal has then again been reprised, it seems. So maybe United just take a step back and think, okay, as I say, we've got these two guys in, hopefully, that can score goals. We've got a bit more time now to assess the centre forward option.
So you're saying I'm right, and we are going to get him on.
Bang on, Jay. You nailed it again.
We'll see him walking through Old Trafford like Berbatov.
Mystic Motti.
Thank you, Laurie. I'm glad you backed me up on that one.
Do you know that Berbatov deal where everyone saw him walking through Old Trafford? How come we have never seen another potential United signing walking in front of the glass windows at Old Trafford other than Berbatov? That shot of him walking I've never seen that shot of anyone else.
That's a good point. I can't remember.
They must have done that on purpose. They must have been like, just walk down that corridor.
What was the circumstance?
So we signed Berbatov on deadline day, I think it was.
Under the noses of City.
City tried in the 11th hour because someone had all this money. So when they bought Robinho the same day.
But I remember the shot on Sky Sports News. I was at my friend Gareth's house. Yeah, the biggest telly I'd ever seen at that time. 50-inch plasma. Couldn't believe it. This is
That's still pretty big these days.
Yeah. And I remember Sky Sports News on the screen, and Berbatov was walking through, and you could see him through the glass. And I think it was Old Trafford as well.
No, it was Old Trafford.
That front face with the sort of greenish glass. And I thought, I've literally never seen a player sort of paraded.
Meeting Fergie.
It was
shaking his hand like that bizarre. Was the meet and greet was there.
And everyone was filming it through the window from the ground, from the outside. And I thought, we've never done that with any other player.
Do you want them to do that with Bryan?
Do it with Bryan. Yeah. Should have done it with Ronaldo actually when we signed him under City's nose. But
maybe that's what United are waiting for then. Just waiting for Ruben to get back to Manchester.
Or waiting for Ratcliffe to pay the window cleaner bill so we can actually see through the bloody things. No, talk to me about Rasmus Hojlund, because you mentioned before that there seems to have been a bit of a shift in his future at Man United.
Possibly, yeah.
Okay.
I think, he came out, didn't he, and said, I want to stay.
Yeah.
And I'd got the information that United feel like Mbeumo and Cunha, could do jobs up at number 9. I'm sort of thinking, okay, well, if you've also got Ahmad there, you've got Bruno, would maybe play as one of the 10s, even Mason Mount, or, I'm trying to think of other players.
Xerxes knocking about in it.
So if you had Hojlund there still, you don't necessarily need another striker, but what's to say, but I just feel that maybe as the summer goes on, I think that might shift. I think United would look to sell him rather than a loan. It's just whether they can get obviously he's got book value, hasn't he, from the fee that was paid to Atalanta. So for the PSR calculations, getting a fee for him that exceeds that it's about £40 million, something like that. So yeah, you're wincing. You don't think that's possible?
No, not this summer.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, and I've defended Rasmus Hojlund quite a lot. You know it. You said I do feel for the lad. I really do, because regardless of whether he's good enough or not, the stick he's been getting, he's just relentless in it. Yeah. I've said this a million times. Are we going to get £40 million for a striker that's just had a poor season? And he's still unproven in a certain way. And it was like 16 goals in all competitions in his first season, which was a good return. Even his last season at Atalanta, or that season at Atalanta that we bought him because of, wasn't that amazing. It was it like 10 or 9 or 7 Serie A goals? Yeah.
Then
so
in the second half of the season,
I feel like it's a bit of a punt. I know strikers, especially young strikers, are in short supply, but I just wonder, 40 million sounds, it's a little bit of a push to get that. You never know, it might
What's
happen.
the current interest? Do you know of any?
Well, Inter
Okay.
are definitely there. I think there's a few clubs that are looking at it, but it feels like they do take former Premier League players, don't they? And I mean, look at
it's a great model.
They've been to two Champions League finals in recent years, haven't they? And they've somehow managed to configure it.
Players you forget, like Mkhitaryan and Mario Darmian, and players
hasn't Mkhitaryan, Darmian, Sanchez and Ashley Young all got a Serie A winners medal?
I think so.
Or certainly competed.
No, they have. I think they
the
have.
time.
Yeah.
And you think all of those, when they left Manchester United, were pretty much surplus to requirements. It is a different style of league. Yeah. It's a different intensity, isn't it?
Look at Scott McTominay.
McTominay, one of the best players.
Player of the year.
Smashing it.
Yeah.
It's like good to. I mean, fair play to him.
Just on this. Oh, actually, no. Before we move on, sorry. Is there any other names in the striking position? Because you sort of mentioned potentially others. Is there anyone you're aware of, or you just know that United are looking broader than just those big?
I think they are looking. I mean, I mentioned Nkunku earlier.
Oh yeah, what's going on with that?
Well, I mean, it's sort of linked, isn't it, to Alejandro Garnacho, where I believe that London would be his preference if he was to move on from United, which feels like it's going to happen, right? Like, I don't know how you can resolve that situation where it's been so public that he's available and then he's posting on Instagram, isn't he? That's a kind of, it's a response to the club, isn't it? And then the fans get caught as collateral. They're very upset, it feels like to me. But even people that are in the industry that I think, they don't have any skin in the game, but they're like, that was a bad move. I know that he must be frustrated that he's basically been pushed towards the exit door. He's got to take some responsibility in that, but equally maybe the club are at fault, or maybe Ruben Amorim's been very hard on him. But at the same time, to kind of post a picture of yourself in another team's kit with obviously Rashford on the back, a player that's also on the way out, it feels provocative, and I'm sure he knows what he's doing in that. But so Chelsea, we're interested in January. I believe that interest is still there. So amidst all those kind of conversations, and Nkunku again was somebody that United looked at in January. Didn't make sense at that point financially, and United decided to keep the powder dry. But he was somebody else that could, I think, come under consideration if the sort of planets align.
I'd rather if we did sell Garnacho, we just sold Garnacho, and because I don't
think it'd be a swap deal.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Deals.
But I think you spoke about this in the past, haven't you, about how difficult swap deals are, and it's more likely that you'll sell him and then buy the player from them, even though that seems daft. It makes more sense in a way. But I'd rather we just sold Garnacho to Chelsea and didn't buy Christopher Nkunku. Personally, I'm not
saying it's advanced at all. It's nothing like that. I just think they're asking the question.
I mean,
they're seeing what the parameters of the deal would be.
He's all right, Nkunku. I think a lot of his goals came in the Conference League last season, didn't they?
Yeah.
And he's been injured a lot, hasn't he?
Yeah, and I just don't. He's not a player that particularly excites me.
Yeah.
In many ways, it's like you were saying about Martinez. It's like, is that a massive step up from Onana? Maybe, maybe not. Is Nkunku a massive step up from Rasmus Hojlund? Maybe. Yeah. Maybe he's a little bit better, but I don't think it's a huge step. But for me, it doesn't feel like
a proper centre forward.
No, it's like
he's a kind of.
He's kind of like a number 10 again.
Yeah, he could almost do that sort of. We could play him up front. We could play him in.
He's like a Xerxes type of figure.
Yeah, he's more. He's a bit sharper. He's a bit quicker. He strikes the ball better than Xerxes. But I don't think his link-up play is quite as good. His hold-up play isn't as good. But he's got a bit more pace about him. He's got a bit more kind of flair to him. I don't know, a bit more dynamic maybe than Xerxes. But again, he's not a. For me, from what I've seen anyway, he's not like a target man by any means. He's not someone that you're going to put the ball on his head and he'll get you 20 a season. He got 14 for Chelsea last season, but like you said, I think 7 or so of them were.
There's quite a few. I think in the Premier League,
27 in the Premier League,
it wasn't.
Didn't he score a hat trick against Southampton? Have I made it up?
He did get a hat trick at one point
So is that the 3 that he's got?
Maybe it was, yeah.
I mean,
and obviously a lot of those were substitute appearances, etc. But I don't know.
He didn't have many minutes, did he? I think he had about 900 minutes or something in the Premier League, so it can't be too harsh on him. But just for me, he's a decent player. I don't think he's one of those where it's like... Do you remember... I know he's a different type of player, but do you remember when we linked with the kid who went to Spurs, Tal?
Yeah.
And everyone was just get him. Just get him.
Just pay the 10 million.
Just get anyone. You know what I mean? And it feels a little bit like that. Just get someone. Well, no, let's just not get anyone. Let's get someone who's actually going to elevate this team, especially if you're going to throw in 2 really good attackers in Mbeumo and Matheus Cunha.
Yeah. Let's move on to some outs then, because obviously that's one of the sort of crucial things in all this. Your colleague Mark Critchley wrote a really good sort of couple of lines about United selling players in one of his pieces recently. I'll read it. He says, last time United agreed the sale of a first team squad member this early in a summer was more than a decade ago, when Dynamo Moscow signed Alexander Butner for 4.4 million in 2014. That is insane, isn't it? How little we can shift players, especially early in windows, because that frees up. You can set your stall out, you know what your pocket money is, you know what you take into the car boot. I've got 15 quid and I can spread it across X, Y and Z. Instead it's like, can I have another 50p? Okay, mate. Like, we need to just know what we've got and be able to spend it.
Yeah.
How is that so difficult, do you think?
I mean, 2014, obviously, so they'd won their last title by that point, hadn't they?
Yeah.
So they're in a weaker position to be selling. I think another stat that Mark put in his piece was about City and Liverpool selling around £500 million worth of talent over the past few years, and United's equivalent being 100 million. So it's a big gap, that, and that is a consequence of not being very good on the pitch, because suitors will say, well, if they're not getting in that team and they're not even all that great, they're 15th in the Premier League, then they're not worth as much as what somebody from Man City's second string would be worth. So that's an issue, and I do think that's just they'll have, the only way around that is by winning more matches and being better on the pitch, but also being smart about when to give players a chance and then sell them at the right moment. I mean, they obviously have done that a little bit with Antony Elanga, I suppose, that they decided to cut the cord there rather than send him on loan, and he's done really well for Nottingham Forest, and now Newcastle are interested, and there is a sell on there for United, so they could actually benefit from that sort of second hand almost. But yeah, it's been a long consequence of United's malaise that they haven't been able to get good money for players, and I don't know how you solve it really, other than getting better on the pitch and
sign better players,
and
then be able to sell them at the right moments.
It does feel as well, we went through a stage at United for quite a few seasons where all the players that seemed to leave was because the contracts ended.
Yeah.
So it just felt like after the summers, it wasn't even selling anyone. It was
even Victor Lindelof and Christian Eriksen. I mean, maybe you would never have sold Christian Eriksen anyway. You bought him on a free, but
Lindelof is a saleable asset, isn't he? What is he? Late 20s. Yeah. He's played, I don't know, I guess.
Is he 30 now maybe? But
100, 200 games for United, whatever it is. A lot of games for us. You think you could get 8 million for him. I know it's not a lot, but it's,
it adds up.
Better than zero.
Do you remember there was that summer, wasn't there, where it was like, I think Pogba, Cavani, Lingard, everyone was just like
first summer.
Yeah, all the contracts ran out at the same time. Yeah,
Mata as well.
And it was just like they all just left, and you think it's not great, is it, when you've got players that are just like letting the contracts wind down, and a lot of them weren't barely playing for United at the time. Yeah. So I think that buys into the stat that you just pointed out there.
Yeah. Just individually looking at some of these players, I think the big names that we've been talking about all summer, Rashford, Antony, Garnacho, and who's the other one? Sancho, right? Interesting thing, 3 out of 4 of these have fallen out with the manager, or multiple managers. Do you think, this is me being a conspiracy theorist, maybe I shouldn't even be asking you this because you can't say yes, but
it's the best way to pre-pose a question.
Yeah. I wonder if, in a way, it's almost better, in the case of Garnacho, use him as the example, to tell other teams that he's fallen out with the manager rather than saying, we don't think he's good enough. Because that way you can sell the potential of, if the relationship's right and the environment's right, he can be X, Y and Z. Whereas if you go, you know what, we're getting rid of him because he's not good enough for us, and like you said, he's not good enough to play for the team who's in 15th, that is a harder sell for me than someone they go, if you get his environment right and he's happy again, he'll be a world-class player. I'm not saying it's manufactured, but I almost think in certain circumstances, can that help you? That it's a relationship problem. It was never going to work with these two. They're chalk and cheese. Whereas if you go, actually, it's chalk and he's not very good, that's a bit of a harder sell maybe. I don't know. And that's just me being speculative and conspiracies. But on those individuals, let's start with Sancho then.
I was going to answer you though.
Oh, go on then.
Well, I hadn't actually.
I didn't want to put you on in the.
No, don't mind. It's
a
good question, good thought process. I hadn't thought of it like that because I actually thought the opposite, where it's detrimental to United to have it so obvious that these players have to go because they've fallen out with the manager. So teams will be like, well, why are we going to give you X amount because we know that you need to sell them? But I think maybe there's some stock in that, to be fair.
If 4D chess.
Yeah, that is layers upon layers.
Like Garnacho, do us a favour, just stick this filler top on for us.
Well,
Marcus, will you comment on it for us?
That definitely isn't
That's not on purpose, is it?
Do us a favour, please, Jadon. Just do a horrible tweet.
It's
about
all
the manager.
authentic, isn't it? I think that.
Yeah.
But maybe maybe they can get better value for a team going, well, actually, just in a different environment, we can really get this guy going. I mean, certainly that was what Unai Emery thought with Villa, wasn't it? He thought Marcus Rashford just needs a change of scenery, and he did produce to a degree, really. Certainly that sort of second leg against PSG, he looked on fire that second half, didn't he?
Yeah.
But yeah, clearly he now has ambitions beyond that, such as Barcelona.
Yeah.
And whether they take that same view, I mean, it feels like they would if the price is right, but clearly, that price needs to come down from their point of view.
There was talk, wasn't there, of Rashford maybe a loan move to Barcelona.
Well, I think for me that seems the likeliest outcome alone.
Yeah.
Because United want a sale. That's not in doubt. 40 million was obviously the price they agreed with Aston Villa, so you feel like any club that comes and pays 40 million they'll accept. But are there any clubs out there that would do that and then also be able to compensate Rashford to the same degree that he's currently at? They then have to come to an agreement, United and him, with his remaining contract to bridge that gap, you'd think, or they will. So yeah, I don't know. So that's why I then come to the stage of, well, a loan makes more sense because a lot of clubs will go, listen, we'll give it a go. We're still a bit unsure about exactly what's going on there, so we'll have him on loan and let's see how he goes, and maybe then we'll commit to a full transfer after that.
It's tough though, isn't it? Because then it'll be, let's say you do a 12-month loan, that'll be 18 months that he's been out on loan at other clubs. He's gone from being a 26-year-old to a 28-year-old, or whatever it may be. Then you're selling someone that his contract's going to run out in his early to mid-30s rather than 30. You end up pushing it all down the line. He's got less years on his United contract. He's getting older. Then you try and you do sell him, and you either get less money or worst case scenario, Barca don't want him. Then what's he worth? That would be my concern with that. But obviously, we're in a position where he's got to go, and there aren't that many buyers. I did see some suggestions that, because a lot of people have said, well, Barca are going for Nico Williams, that would mean the end of the Rashford chase. Do you know if that's the case? Do you think they could potentially go for both? Obviously, Rashford could play as a number 9 as well. He can be versatile.
Well, it was very telling, wasn't it, in that interview with the Spanish YouTubers that support Barcelona. So you could tell why that interview has happened there, right? He built up the fact that he could play as a number 9. So clearly, from his point of view, I think he thinks Nico Williams doesn't make it terminal that he could go there as well. And certainly Hansi Flick has said nice things. I think Deco has also confirmed that Rashford is a player that they like. So I don't know. I mean, personally, I think he's played there for United, and he played there for Villa, really, didn't he? I just think he's better off the left. I think that's where he does his best work, and certainly that was what he felt at the time when he was being tried up top with United. I think was it Ten Hag when he first came in. There was times when he played at centre forward, and I think he really wanted to be out on the left. So yeah, I don't know. Let's see how it sort of develops, but clearly we're at a stage in the transfer window right now where that you got to aim high as a player, haven't you? And that's what he did in the January window, and then ultimately came round to the idea of Aston Villa. I don't know how this summer window will go, whether he's open to other alternatives.
It's just a bit of a mess, isn't it, to be honest with you?
Yeah.
How we got to the stage where, what is he, 27, Marcus Rashford, and it looks like he'll be stuck. I know he's not exactly everyone's favourite, but it just saddens me the way it's all panned out with Rashford. I think you touched on it, but I don't think you went into the Jadon Sancho Napoli links. Another one who, for different reasons, it's actually similar reasons, doesn't look like he's got a future at Manchester United. Obviously, with him, we spent a lot of money on him. Again, though, he's on big money. There are similarities with him and Rashford. I thought Jadon Sancho did it okay at Chelsea, but there was a big sort of spell, wasn't there, where he didn't get any goals or assists. Was it 15 games where he didn't? And then obviously he scores in the Europa Conference final, and there were some games where you could see what he's about. Chelsea, I think, was it Carl Anker we had on who said they offered around 90k a week, which was nowhere near what he's on now, so he didn't fancy that one. Do you think he could end up going to Napoli? Is that going to work? Would they be willing to pay him what he wants, or United?
Again, it all comes down to wages, doesn't it? And how can that be sort of balanced out? And that's why, again, these things take until the kind of deadline, because you're like, well, let's see, and then okay, actually, we actually have to do a deal here. Obviously, the Borussia Dortmund loan that they had was incentivised, so the further they went in the Champions League, the more money United got, so they could do something like that. I think I've seen Juventus linked as well, right. Fenerbahce linked as well, but again, it's big wages that we're talking about, so there's going to have to be some kind of discussion around how that solves itself. And yeah, I mean, I've thought myself, well, Ruben Amorim wasn't the manager that fell out with Jadon Sancho, it was Erik ten Hag. But I think the sale of Sancho to Chelsea, effectively what it was until the obligation wasn't sort of followed through on, was a broader point from the club that was, okay, we need to move on from this player. So I still think that's the case. But it is going to, I come back to it again, sorry, the pre-season date of July the 7th, I'm fascinated to know what's going to happen with these players that are basically up for sale, that, you know, does Amorim involve them in first team training? It would feel like a very unopportune sort of situation to be in, inopportune for a head coach that's trying to start something new, as his statement to the Old Trafford crowd at the end of last season said.
The thing with Sancho, and not to be too sort of dismissive of him, I just don't think he's good enough for the Premier League. I don't think he's got the physicality to play in the Premier League. He's not fast enough, he's not strong enough. I don't think he's got that kind of real fight and sort of bite in his character where he's going to overcome his sort of, you know, physical weaknesses, if you want to call them that, with this just outrageous determination. I think he needs to leave England, personally, if he wants to play in the Champions League. I don't think there's any team in England that would start him that has anything like the sort of money that he wants or United want to buy him in the first place. I just don't think that's a thing. I think he could go back to Germany. I think he could go to Italy. Probably do a job in Spain after we've seen what Antony's done there. But I just think, you know, him in England isn't going to work for me. And I think, you know, Chelsea seem to sort of think a similar thing, or they didn't want him. On the obligation to buy situation, have you ever seen that before? Have you ever seen a team go, actually, no? And also, just as a second question in there, is it always the case that there's a small fee to sort of go, actually, this obligation isn't an obligation? Or was that unique to that deal? Because why have we never seen anyone go, actually, he wasn't good enough, I don't want him?
Well, I think it was also the wages, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, because weren't they willing to offer him a deal, but it was 90k.
Yeah, so the clause was included on the proviso that they weren't able to agreed terms. Now maybe they didn't really want to do a deal, so they sort of offered a maybe token gesture. But Chelsea are offering
wage.
Well, Jonny Evans signed on the minimum wage when he first rejoined United, didn't he?
Respect.
For a month. But Chelsea don't pay big wages, do they? That's the whole business model, where they get these young players in and they stretch the contracts out over, you know, a decade and
1,000 years.
Yeah, and so he would have had to fit into that, because it would have been really weird if you've got this one player that's beyond that and then all the rest of the players are on a much, you know, smaller or reduced at least salary. So I think obviously the deal happened in it late in the window last summer, so there wasn't time for him to agree his personal terms with Chelsea at that point, so they sort of sorted it all out as a loan with this obligation. But okay, if you can't agree terms, then, you know, at the cost of 5 million, it'll, you know, send him back. Now Chelsea, if they'd really wanted him, probably could have sorted something out.
If he'd scored 25 goals from last season, he'd be there now.
Yeah.
That's a good point now. They'd have found a way, wouldn't they? I think you're right. It's just yet another mess. One player that did have a very good loan spell was Antony.
Your boy.
Yeah. At Real Betis. It's a bit of a weird situation there, though, isn't it? Because I think they'd love to have him back, but there's question marks about whether they can afford the money that United want. What do you reckon's going to happen there?
I feel, I was speaking to somebody the other day, and they felt that he was the likeliest to get sorted sooner, basically.
Right,
that you'd then have to wait a bit longer for Garnacho and wait a bit longer for Rashford. And then I don't know about Sancho, to be honest. But I think that I think Antony, Betis clearly do. Sorry, my phone's.
Sorry, that could be is that an update?
It's
confirmed.
It's my mum.
Right, okay.
What do you want for tea? Oh, right.
Sorry. So she might have some Bryan Mbeumo news for us then.
Have you looked at? No, okay, she's not. Sorry.
Chicken Kiev, please. Love you.
Sardines, please. Joe says they have lots of protein.
50p a can. Carry on.
Antony.
Yeah, there we go.
Betis.
That's a reality.
That's sort of where we were then. Yeah, I mean, they would obviously love to do it. I could see that happening, to be honest. His wages aren't at the level that Sancho, Rashford are at. So I know that it's beyond what Real Betis pay. I think when he joined, they were paying like 84%, weren't they? Which equated to up there. I think Isco was on a little bit more, so it wasn't like he was their top earner, but it was certainly beyond what they usually pay. But you feel like that one could be solved.
That seems to fit as well, because I think Isco got their Player of the Year, didn't he?
Right.
He was their sort of talisman last season. Yeah. So as long as he's willing to accept something less than that, I could imagine that sort of slotting in nicely. It'd be great if we could just get that done. Loan successful, played really well for him, good enough for that league. Get him signed, 30 million, whatever it is. It'd be nice to just have a bit more, like we said, know what your pocket money is going into the car boot rather than waiting till the end.
Have you been going to car boots recently, Joe?
I went to a car boot on Sunday.
Did you?
Can you tell?
Did you get anything?
Okay. No, because it got rained off.
Oh.
Bad weather.
So wait, were you there when it started raining, or?
Yes. So we got there.
Ready for, you were rubbing your hands. You got your 50p's already.
Yeah, we had a £5 each.
In coins?
No.
You're
notes.
making people break into notes.
Yeah, but it's a decent car boot.
Oh,
and,
okay.
And we were looking round, pewter jugs, your memorabilias, all sorts. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, get everything in. Oh, carnage, pandemonium.
Who decides that? Maybe like one store wanted to stay open.
Yeah,
maybe they did. Well, the plant guy, he was loving it. Yeah. He was licking his lips. Said, saves me a job. But once everyone else is gone, what's he going to do? Sell to the other vendors? Doubt it. Casemiro.
Seamless segue.
Yeah, perfect.
Speaking of plants that need watering
of renewed interest from Saudi Arabia, which we weren't, I saw this week that there was some hints about him, because he seems to have, like, if you go back 12 months, it's like, you've got to get him out. He's done. He's finished. Then he's had a sort of, I wouldn't say a world-class season by any means, but a kind of a season with increasing responsibilities maybe at Manchester United. As that European competition went on, it was like, actually, he could win it for us. But he's certainly not a long-term option. Is he even really a short-term option if we want to be challenging up the league? And off the back of that, is there sort of any interest in him leaving at the moment?
I just don't really hear much, to be honest. Okay. And clearly, he was the player that Ratcliffe was sort of questioning why has he been
doing that before he got here, wasn't he?
Exactly.
Ratcliffe. Didn't he go on the museum tour and start ranting about that?
It was a repeat inquiry. But I just, again, the wages that he's on, he looks, like he's happy to see out his final. He said this, hasn't he? His final year at United, and so what do you do in that situation? He's actually, he did contribute towards the end of the season. United haven't got European competition next year, so you're sort of thinking, well, in certain circumstances, he still does a job, doesn't he? Like, I know it's a lot of money, and you shouldn't really be paying that much per week for somebody that is seen as a peripheral figure. But I suppose they gave him that contract with the idea that he would be a very good role model for people towards the end of it, and maybe he still will be. I mean, he obviously had to, I think, sharpen up at the start of last season, and then he whipped his top off in San Sebastian, and you're like, okay, this guy's pretty stacked.
Maybe there's something going on.
Yeah. So he did go to work, and he obviously won his place back, and Amorim was very full of praise for him, wasn't he? And I just think you've lost Christian Eriksen as a midfield option. United, we could maybe get onto this in terms of, I think ultimately Amorim would want an athletic midfielder in that role that could get up and down the pitch. But at this moment, with nobody coming in, obviously priorities being elsewhere, I don't think it really makes sense to try and force Casemiro out the door, because that's what you'd be doing.
I do like his personality, Casemiro. I think there's massive question marks about whether he can cut it in the Premier League or whatever, but when he wasn't getting games, he didn't spit his dummy out. He seemed to just sort of get on with it, kept himself fit.
He had a vital role in that Lyon game, for example.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? So it was like, when he did come in, then like you say, he does a job, and you can see when he's on the pitch, he's someone that the players respect and admire and listen to. Even when he's off the pitch, I've seen him when he's warming up shouting instructions. So he's obviously, and you can't argue with his
club, doesn't he? It's not zoned out.
No, and his record speaks for itself. He's one of the most successful midfielders in the modern era. So if we can't move him on, I don't think it's a disaster to have Casemiro in your squad by any stretch of the imagination. It's just ideally you'd want to move him on, wouldn't you? Because especially like you said, with no European football, even his chances might be few and far between if it's one game a week for the brunt of the season.
You mentioned a couple of words there. Midfielder, athletic.
Oh yeah.
Are you trying to will yourself a move to Manchester United, Laurie?
Nice.
Be honest.
We've seen this.
No, I've heard that Manchester United are looking for a midfielder from the Athletic. I mean, an athletic midfielder, and then all of a sudden you crop up at Old Trafford with your little kit on. And then you're sending that picture out to agents. I'm making all this up now. Are you trying to get yourself a little move?
Listen, I'm primed for a career change in my late 30s.
Well, let's go through. Let's go
talk
through
about Casemiro being past it.
Let's go through some of the details then. If you were to sign a Laurie Whitwell type,
okay.
Height.
Well, taller than 5'9", 5'10".
There you go.
Right.
Taller than that, which is tall.
How tall are you, Joe?
6'4".
Yeah, get him in.
Age.
Well, they would, I think, want a younger model, such as a early 20s. It's basically Manuel Ugarte is what I think United thought they were getting, and it's just not quite happened, has it? He's not really that up and down. His passing range isn't quite as crisp as you need in that role. So it's basically a player of that age profile, but that's better.
We only signed him a year ago. Is there any names on that list? Is there sort of an archetype of a player on that list?
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. My knowledge on this part of the pitch isn't as extensive as higher up, just because I don't think they're as advanced as they are. And again, it might be that they wait until they know who they sell, basically.
There doesn't seem to be any even real rumours.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? I suppose obviously they signed Ugarte. It was all about Ugarte last summer, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So. Maybe they think, well, you've got him, Mainu, obviously Casemiro, Bruno's going to have to play deeper potentially if both these guys come in.
What's the latest? What's the latest with Toby Collier?
Toby Collier?
Is he still expecting? I mean, maybe he's someone who could feature.
I think he will. I
don't know. I
do
like Collier.
He just got injured, didn't he, at the end of last season?
And he's certainly got the energy that you need. Yeah. Just whether he's got that quality, but we'll have to wait and see. I mean, the only name sort of Richard Rios was one that was being mentioned, but it was like from Palmeiras for 84 million quid buyout clause. You think that ain't
right? Sure,
absolutely. Like, let's get real.
Hopefully those days are gone. Oh my God, we've accidentally spent 80 million on something.
We paid it all up front.
Yeah, we've got loads of money. That's so mad that they did that. It's hilarious, really, isn't it? Just have it. I mean, you don't want to spread it out? Nah.
Why? It's only going to sit there.
I feel like I should just clarify that Leicester were demanding it all in once. It wasn't like United offered it, just to.
I think Leicester. No, just do it. Just whatever.
Yeah, you listen. Reality is what you make it.
Yeah,
so
exactly. No,
feel free to imagine
your
that.
version is the truth, and mine is an absolute lie. Moving away from the on the pitch stuff, few changes above. I think it's. The Wilcox stuff has been covered a little bit more on the channel, so we don't need to dwell on that too much. But in terms of Jason Wilcox, he has been sort of upgraded in his role from technical director to director of football or sporting director.
Director of football is what he was named as, yeah.
Just a little bit on him. Obviously, he's been a hit at Old Trafford. We heard Jim Ratcliffe talking about him glowingly. He's getting promotions and his scope seems to be widening by the day. What is his sort of role and how much is he appreciated at United?
Yeah, I mean, clearly Jim Ratcliffe has spoken warmly of him, basically saying we've got Jason's eyes,
We've got Jason Wilcox's eyes. I think that's what Ratcliffe said in the shower.
Why have I given you the opportunity to sing that?
Right,
I feel like you've got more up your sleeve as well that you're just going to...
No, I'm done now.
You done? Okay.
Yeah.
Sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can always cut it out.
Okay.
No.
Keep it in.
Leave it in.
Sorry, God. We've got Jason Wilcox's eyes.
Yes, and so he's shown clearly an ability to manage up as well as down. So I think he's got a good relationship with Ruben Amorim. He's there on the training pitches. He's got that football background where he can have those kind of conversations with the head coach of Manchester United, which I think is what you need in that role. And then he's also able to communicate that with Ratcliffe. Now, obviously, Ratcliffe is coming into football. His knowledge base isn't as wide as, somebody that you'd want to be able to make real key telling football decisions. So he obviously has to lean on Jason Wilcox in that regard. I think Omar Barada's been pivotal in this as well. They obviously work together at Manchester City, which I think maybe as time goes on is something to kind of consider. You know, it's interesting, right? You've got these two guys that were at City and now they're kind of leading Manchester United. It's it shouldn't preclude somebody from doing that. You know, Matt Busby played for Liverpool and City, didn't he? And then was able to have fantastic success for United. But it's just an interesting note to observe, I think. But now it's a big job for him. You know, he's got to pick the players. He's got to manage that club from a football perspective more than he was doing really in the technical side, because you had Dan Ashworth there as the sporting director, but clearly that wasn't working. I think there were too many voices in that sort of leadership group. Clearly had a clash with Ratcliffe over personality. I think Barada and Wilcox appreciated more what Ratcliffe wanted and what would then see their position solidified, and then you've also got Chris Favell as director of recruitment, who is a big voice in this as well. So, but yeah, Wilcox, it's a challenge now for him, isn't it? It's a huge thing to be sort of overseeing United's football department at any stage, let alone when they're in this sort of state of turmoil. So yeah, let's see how it goes. Certainly, he was involved in selecting Cunha, going for Liam Delap. He held face-to-face talks with him. Bryan Mbeumo as well. I think Amorim, is involved in the recruitment to the point of he wants players that can make an impact now. So that's what they've gone for there in this regard. It's a slight change from the original way that Ineos came into the club, where I think they were definitely targeting younger players that could develop and maybe be sold if needs be. Now that is still a bit of a strand, but even younger than I think they were looking at previously. So you've obviously got someone like Aidan Heaven coming in, 18 years old, Diego Leon, who will be joining as well. Various other players that are of that kind of teenage years, and then Wilcox's background at the academy at Man City, where he did help transform what they were able to do. I think that is going to be tapped into time and again with the kind of players that United go for.
Yeah, it's mad how sort of his rise coming from, obviously, was it Southampton when he did
for a year, yeah.
And it's like,
well, he was director of football at Southampton, so he was in charge of Man City's academy for years before.
Yeah, obviously, the City's where he made his name and the reason he's got the United gig, but it's just a weird scenario, really, isn't it? Because just waiting to see what happens. I don't think you can say, he's definitely going to be a success or he's not. It's just, the great unknown almost for me, because the sort of the reason he got the job is because of what happened at City and the success, but how much that was down to him, you don't know.
Yep.
Yes, obviously they've had a lot of success with their academy and the players that we've spoken about coming to United. The chaos that's been going on at United, Dan Ashworth coming in then leaving, the manager's obviously changed since Jason Wilcox has come in. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't know how I feel about it, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
I'm just sort of like, I'm not like, oh my God, Jason Wilcox, the answer to all our problems.
Yeah,
and I'm not like,
I don't think anyone
like,
would think that anybody should be. But
no, and I'm not sceptical either. I'm just
see.
waiting to see. Is probably what I'm sort of getting at. Another person who's important at Manchester United, as always, is Jonny Evans.
Oh,
yes. We've been crying out for this, haven't we? Since we bumped into him in San Diego when he just come back to United, we were all like, wouldn't it be great if he stayed on for forever?
This is the first step, it seems like.
Yeah, because we all love Jonny Evans. But you want someone, obviously, he's got a coaching role, I think. Is he helping well? Is it sort of, what's his role?
Loans manager is really what it's going to be, which I thought it was going to be a coaching role, because there was sort of rumours that he was going to stay on.
Is this at an estate agent?
No.
Oh, what is it?
Do you need a loan? For your car boot sales.
What is a loans manager? Sorry, what is that?
You see the glint in his eye when he was thinking of that joke, and he was like, I could see him like, little glint there, and he's like, I've got one here. Loans manager? Is he an estate agent?
What, but genuinely, what is that?
Have you not heard of a loans manager before in
managing
a football
loans
context?
He's not managing loans.
Yeah, United players go out on loan, don't they?
Yeah.
So it's overseeing their progress at these clubs, offering advice. They did have one before. A guy called Les Parry was doing it for a couple of years. Loads of clubs do have them.
Do you know what though? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you then, but we need someone like this, because I think far too often it's been almost counterproductive, some of the stuff that's gone on with United and loans.
Well, that's it. So I mean, even bad loans can sometimes be good for a player, because they're learning, they're growing resilience, because they're having a tough time, and football is a tough business, right? Like it's for most people, it's more disappointment than elation, isn't it? Really. And so dealing with that is hard, and these loans are supposed to be an exposure to that, and playing with men who are perhaps lower down the football ladder, so they aren't in this protective bubble that Premier League players are. So, and Jonny Evans has come through that process. He's gone on loans himself. He has come through United's academy. So that wealth of knowledge and experience, and obviously he's a smart guy, should be a really good fit for that role. And obviously, again, it's a new role for him. It is a sort of administrative role, kind of a technical role almost. And so it's going to have to be a bit of time, I think, for him to get fully versed in the exact nuances. But I think it involves a lot of travel as well, to be honest. It's a big commitment, to kind of go to these places, keep an eye on them. Darren Fletcher was doing a bit of this before, when he was sort of technical director. It was sort of helping think of what loans could suit what players, and it's clearly it's an inexact science, isn't it? It's difficult to say that loan is definitely going to work for that player, but I think that having somebody with that sort of skill set, I think is a good thing, and I think having him around the place is also good, because as much as he's done on the pitch since he rejoined, which is way more than what he thought he was going to do, having him around the place, I think, has been a positive. He spoke to us in Los Angeles about the redundancies and the staff that were losing their jobs. It was pretty compelling, and he brought it up himself. So he's obviously well tapped into the fabric of the club and understanding the realities of it, and so I think that will be really beneficial in this role. But it's interesting that it wasn't a coaching, because I thought it was
very different, isn't it? That's why it sort of shocked me a bit, because I'd seen that there was a role, but I didn't realise the details of exactly what it was. That's really interesting. It's almost like not admin, obviously, because I'm sure there's more to it than that, but it's very much a off-pitch kind of role, isn't it? Which is interesting. Tapping into his sort of experience and his brain a little bit, rather than just the fact that he's been a footballer. I think
you said, it's going back a while, but he did it himself. When he was at Sunderland, he went on loan too. Do you remember when Keano was there?
Didn't he, with them? Royal Antwerp.
So he's got that. And sometimes with United, it's like these players go on loan, you almost feel like they're forgotten about. And even we've seen players go out on loan and not even get any minutes. And you're like,
look at Ahmad. You can look at those loans in a couple of ways. The Rangers one didn't go well, but then does he grow that strength of character from that? And then he goes to Sunderland and has an explosion.
I actually think that's one of the better ones, because it seems to sort of go in stages, and then he ends up at United doing a job for United. Do you know what I mean? It's like Lingard almost, where he went on all those loans and then ends up in the United first team when everyone thought might have given up on him. So, but there's been ones, hasn't there? Was like Tuanzebe had I think was it when he went to Italy and played like 10 minutes. There was one or two where you go, what even is the point of this? So having someone like Jonny Evans out overseeing it seems like a good fit to me anyway.
Yeah, me too. Just one final thing before we go, the ticket prices. And you wanted to speak about this, didn't you?
I read your article, and obviously the 58 got in touch with us. I saw Musk's statement on it as well. It feels to me, and you can sort of clarify this for me, but just almost like dynamic pricing. It's like this pricing where it's like, we heard all this sort of noise about this, didn't we, in the summer, where it's like Oasis tickets were, do you know what I mean, going through the roof and that. And I'm not trying to be dismissive or flippant about it, because a lot of people are very angry about it, where it's like these category A, B, C tickets or whatever, and you end up in a situation where members are going to pay up to, is it like 97 quid, I think is the top.
For the category A ones.
Category A ones, which is like, United versus City or whatever. I mean, what have you made of this by United, and also the reaction as well? Because I know you've been all over it, and there's a lot of anyone I speak to is just fuming.
Yeah, I can understand the anger totally, and there's a sort of double pronged element to it, because one, it's the rises anyway, and that is upsetting for a lot of people, understandably so. The other one is the communication, where Omar Barada apologised, didn't he, over the £66 price introduction midway through last season. Now, the fan advisory board, Fans Forum are saying that that's similar to what's happened here, where they've announced these price rises without consulting them on the detail of them. I think United would push back and say, well, we did show you what prices we were looking at, and they were more than what we've actually put them to, and you've obviously pushed back, and we've then listened, and these are the results. Is that liaising with fans? To a degree it is. Is it giving it lip service? Ultimately, Sir Jim Ratcliffe runs the club now, so he can kind of do what he wants, but absolutely fans are then entitled to say, well, we don't like this, we disagree with you, protest, it might become more visible. You're talking about 20,000 people each match day that are affected by these price rises, because it's separate to the season ticket price increases, which we already saw, sort of 5%.
5% on AF season tickets.
Yeah, so these are higher, aren't they? So I suppose United are saying, well, we're trying to look after the people that are coming every single week, but there'll be people that are members that go pretty regularly because they'll just be getting their tickets as you go, and it's hard to get a season ticket because there's a surplus demand for them, right? So, you know, I mean, the one for me, so you're saying 97, I think a lot of clubs do have this categorisation.
I know that's like the
so maybe it was always coming.
One,
but it's right. I think you've got to look at the sort of the top end of it and how much it could impact people. It's the fact that you've only got 2 Category C games for me.
Is it like
Wolves and Sunderland? I don't know what Wolves have done so far. And it's based on demand.
We took Cunha off them, so it's like, no one wants to watch them anymore.
I mean, Burnley, so they're a Category B game, and the cheapest ticket for those games is £57. Now, the average price overall last season for a ticket at United, this includes season tickets, so they're less cost per game. Per game. So the average is down. It's £41.41. So that's a £16 sort of difference. Okay, maybe if it was only members, it'd be slightly higher than £41, but it's still a significant chunk of money higher now that people that are buying on one-off games will have to pay for.
It's annoying.
Go on.
It's annoying that, I think instinctively you kind of can understand. Okay, well, yeah, I can see why the City game will cost more. But to me, that's the worst way to do it, because it's like, if you're a Man United fan and you haven't got 90 quid lying about, you can never go and watch the big games. You can never go and watch the really important games against your rivals, against City and Liverpool and Arsenal and whoever. You're only allowed to go and watch Sunderland, and obviously it's still great, and if you're a United fan you want to, but I think that to me is almost horrible. It's like going, oh, this is the really good stuff and we're dangling it up here. If you ain't got 90 quid lying around, let's say you want to go with a family member or a friend, you haven't got nearly 200 quid lying about, you can't go and watch Man United versus Liverpool. What's the point in that?
It's dangerous, man. Honestly, it is, because United just finished 15th. You're pricing certain fans out as it is, and like young fans, I take my kids, and like my eldest has almost lost interest anyway, but my 2 youngers still into United. I took them a few times, and it's like, people are going to have to make that decision, and then also if the team's not doing well, if we don't improve, you can end up with younger fans who just sort of lose interest. It can happen, and you can't take it for granted that you're always going to have 73 or 74,000 fans at Old Trafford, regardless. And also this talk of a 100,000 seat stadium, regardless of how true that is. Are you going to be able to fill it if you're charging anyone big money, and the sort of the enthusiasm for United is dying down, year in, year out? Because we laugh at City, what they used to do, sort of giving tickets away, but they're doing what they had to do to get fans through the gate. And it's like, we've always sort of had this attitude of just taking it for granted that you're always going to have a packed out Old Trafford, you're always going to have fans that no matter what will spend whatever it takes to watch United, and that might not always be the case. It might not. It'll
change the demographic as well, because you'll get a certain type of person coming to the game that can afford these ticket prices. I don't know. Are they going to be as vocal? I mean, maybe I'm generalising there.
No, I think that's a fair question, though, isn't it? Because I'm not saying that people come on a day trip or whatever aren't passionate United fans. No one's saying that. Yeah. But you will get fans that maybe don't join in with the chants and stuff and get behind the team as much, because it is a bit of a one-off for them, and
or at least it makes you more of a consumer. So if what you're seeing is bad, you're going to be, well, this is awful, and voice that.
That's a good
more
point
so probably than, I mean, the fans inside the stadium have stuck with the team a lot, actually. I know there's been a few boos here and there, and that's,
you saw it
entitled to that.
At the Villa game, didn't you? We just lost the Europa League final.
Yeah.
I mean, that is, you'd expect it to be as toxic as it could be. The final game of the season, where if we don't play our cards right, we can end up finishing 17th, I think, going into that game. And yet, the beginning of the game, everyone's chanting Ruben Amorim's name, getting behind him. So, like, I think you're right, and I think sometimes United fans get a bad rap.
Whereas if they feel that they're being taken for a ride, is that emotion going to be there? Is that kind of sort of innate desire to create an atmosphere?
Quid for this starts being said a little bit.
I remember when we chatted to Sandy Mitten, who you do Talk of the Devils with, a few years ago, we did the Glazers documentary, and he summed up, he said, you can't just treat fans like customers. It's not the same. You know what I mean? Like,
and if you do, you end up getting customers.
And
you stop getting fans.
That's it. I think he compared it to supermarket, Tesco or Sainsbury's, whatever, below the prices, you'll go and shop there. But United fans, it's different. You stick with your club, but you can't just treat us like customers. We're not. We're fans. And I think I expected a bit better from Ratcliffe. I thought he might get it, and so far at the minute, it doesn't feel like he.
He's a businessman.
Yeah, maybe that's my naivety.
Well, no, I agree. I had similar sort of feelings, and I just think about the Glazers. I mean, they're the ones that have put the club in this much debt, where Ratcliffe is saying he's got to make these changes to get the club back on a even footing, and they're kind of able to avoid too much scrutiny because it's Ratcliffe as the face of it all.
That's a good point.
They wouldn't have been able to raise ticket prices, the Glazers. I mean, they kept them, the same for a decade. They raised them a lot initially, which obviously brought its own attention, rightly so. But they had to keep them the same, really. They were making enough money anyway by their token. They're taking dividends and what have you. But I think also they appreciated really the scenes that would be met at Old Trafford if they did raise them. But now they've kind of taken a backward step. Ratcliffe can do this, and it's not quite the same feeling.
I always worry about that. I think again, talking about in a minute, I think it was an interview with him that Ratcliffe said someone who's got to watch Fulham shouldn't be paying more than someone who's watching United. I think, what the fuck are you on about?
It's not a race to the top, is it? Of like, we'll
do you think we all earn the same as someone in Fulham? I don't think so. Like, what are you talking about?
I mean, they've got a swimming pool on their roof.
I know, and we can dream.
Yeah.
It's just, it's looking at, the fans as the customers in it. And if
as a means to putting the club back on, profitability, it's like, we'll just charge the fans more. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a pretty reductive way of viewing it.
It is. Laurie, thank you so much as always for coming on. Fantastic show as always. We'll get the links to your latest articles and your social media in the description and the comments as well. Thank you very much for joining us at home. Thank you, Jay.
Thanks, Joe. As always. Good stuff.
Thank you very much. This has been Inside United with Laurie Whitwell. We'll see you in a bit.